Tim, big picture. Where does he find the time to get involved in all of this? People might assume he's trying to end a couple of wars, fix the economy. That alone might take up all the hours in the day. So where's he got the time?
Well, I don't think all of these things are coming straight out of Donald Trump's head on the golf course. I don't know. Maybe Bender has a different reporting on that than I do. He's probably closer to where the planning stages of this. I will say that they have an entire administration that has a lot of political appointees that are focused on political retribution. I mean, and they are pretty unapologetic about that. On various times Trump's done interviews. I remember one with Laura Ingraham where she tried to nudge him towards saying that real retribution is just governing well and living well. And Trump was always kind of reluctant. Eventually, he'll kind of say that if pushed, but he's always reluctant. And it has been a stated purpose of this administration that they're going to go after political foes. They're doing so. He's appointed a lot of U.S. attorneys who are very political, much more than kind of in the past, which has been more of a non-political office with some exceptions. That's not been the case for Trump, and he put his own lawyer as the U.S. attorney in New Jersey. He's had Judge Jeanine is now the U.S. attorney for D.C., right? So there are a lot of folks that are oriented towards this mission, and I think we're seeing what he promised, which is a pretty politicized administration focused on retribution.
Michael, the president's fight with Harvard started because the president said he was upset about the university's DEI policies and he wanted to push back against anti-Semitism. Now, Harvard's president acknowledged today that those are issues, but said he doesn't see how punishing Harvard like this addresses those issues. What does your reporting tell you about the administration's endgame right now?
Well, I will say, I think what was very telling was some of the tape you played earlier of Dr. Garber. You can hear he's confounded about what's going on, which is remarkable. Harvard is facing an existential, perhaps untenable crisis here. They've lost billions of dollars in funding for shared research. The latest action last week to block Harvard from enrolling international students. That's a quarter of its student body. In their lawsuit, Harvard explains this as without this group of students, Harvard is not Harvard. And to be facing this sort of crisis and not really understand what is happening around him, I think is pretty telling. What is the end goal here? I mean, the end goal here is to inflict maximum pain on Harvard. We reported that there are people involved in this effort who set out wanting to topple a university to send a message, to have a scalp for the rest of academia, that this sort of unchecked liberalism that this administration sees happening on elite campuses around the country, it has to come to an end.
But what do they say? Are there specifics, Michael, that they give? Because you look at a lot of extraordinarily successful people who, by the way, employ a lot of Americans who have graduated from elite universities like Harvard. They are across the political spectrum, but many of them are definitively more conservative.
There's a couple ways to look at this. One is a lot of this started out as a trying to stamp out anti-Semitism, and the specific complaints around this at Harvard, Columbia, some other Penn schools were the protests that were happening after the October 7th, 2023 terrorist attacks in Israel and Israel's response to that. So Harvard and other schools have acknowledged that they mishandled some of those protests and have taken steps to address them. But Trump's administration says that's not good enough. It's unclear how Harvard can ever satisfy, at this point, Trump's demands. And then we look at these individual investigations, more than a half a dozen at this point. They are extremely broad records requests for the most part on Harvard. This last one with DHS, they wanted individual student data. Harvard has given them everything that they said they are legally required to give them. They're asking questions about some of the requests. Harvard lawyers say, what do you mean by this phrasing? The response came on Thursday from Kristi Noem, not answering the question about specific records requests, but simply saying your ability to enroll international students is over.
So, Lisa, In addition to all that, the administration is now asking federal agencies if they can just cancel their contracts with Harvard, just get rid of them. Is that something that they can just do legally?
Well, obviously, Chris, there's a panoply of federal agencies, and the answers to that question are going to not only be agency by agency, but contract by contract. That's not the way, however, the General Services Administration framed it in its letter to agencies today, which NBC News obtained. I'm going to read from some of it. It says, "We recommend that your agency terminate for convenience each contract that it determines has failed to meet its standards." And earlier in the letter, it talks about a deeply troubling pattern of discrimination at Harvard. Contracts have terms. Each contract's terms are going to determine whether or not that contract can be canceled. The administration can't simply say, we have what we believe is a pattern of troubling conduct, and therefore you should just terminate across the board your contracts with Harvard. That's not the way it works.
So, Frank, what are the implications of using the power of the federal government and DOJ, not just to address what they see as specific wrongs, but to try, it seems, to engineer larger changes, in this case, across higher education broadly?
This is an upending, a deliberate part of a strategy to upend the norm and claim that elitists are controlling the nation, and that it's backlash that the MAGA crowd loves to see. They don't like the idea of expertise, and this is pervasive. This goes right into law enforcement and the pardon of a convicted sheriff in Virginia just recently over the weekend by Trump. It goes into Dan Bongino and Kash Patel saying they're going to get to the bottom of cover-ups at the FBI. All of this is an attempt to say only we can be trusted, and you must discount everything up till now.
Lisa, this story then out of New York City. The Trump administration is trying to put an end to the city's congestion pricing because they claim it's illegal. There have been lots of conversations in New York City about it. There are pros, there are cons. But how unusual is it for the federal government to get involved in something that appears to be a local issue?
Well, the federal government was involved from the outset in the sense that there was an agreement that allowed the New York City Department of Transportation, the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority, to start this congestion pricing tax in the first place, or the toll. What's unusual about this, though, is the way in which they went about it, which is to say, you must cancel it because of these perceived illegalities, and if you don't, we're just going to start terminating federal funding to the city of New York more broadly. Their explanation for why they're doing it, Chris, has also evolved. That could be in part due to the fact that erroneously in this case, the Southern District of New York, Manhattan federal prosecutors filed a memo that they wrote to the Department of Transportation, essentially saying your reasons for cutting off this program do not fall into the law. If these are the legal arguments that you intend to make, we are going to lose. That erroneously got filed in federal court. So now the administration is sort of changing its explanation. Oh, no, we're not cutting off the contract because it's illegal. I'm sorry, we're not cutting off this agreement because it's illegal. We just have a right to change our policy priorities, and therefore you have to stop congestion pricing or risk losing federal funding across transportation programs by May 28th. That, not coincidentally, Chris, is tomorrow.
Tim, it may seem unusual to people that Trump is getting involved in something like New York City congestion pricing. But when he thought he had blocked the program back in February, the White House posted a message saying New York has been saved and posted a picture of Trump in a crown that said, "Long live the king." Does that give us a window into the president's thinking? Or I'm thinking about the Harvard issue when you look at the fact that he doesn't seem to want students who were born in another country, and he's worried about elitism, and yet Elon Musk was born in South Africa and went to an elite university. Just what's his thinking?
Yeah, I'm not sure trying to divine consistency is that useful an exercise here, because obviously there's a bunch of hypocrisies. But I think with the New York situation, you have this combination of Trump really sees himself as a New York creature still, even though he lives in Florida or D.C. at various times. And so I think that image of him being like king of New York is part of his self-perception. I think that he likes to pick foes that he thinks, put him on side of regular folks, like setting aside kind of the merits of congestion pricing and who it helps and who it hurts. I think how he sees this is like, oh, that's a fee that regular folks are going to have to pay, because this progressive boogeyman, wants, cares about the climate or cares about, environment or these other issues. And so I think that he feels like that's a good wedge for him. And so I think that's why these things overlap. And if you just look at Harvard congestion pricing, the thing that ties all this together is Trump is trying to pick enemies, that he thinks puts him on the side of his own people, his own base, versus someone else. It's something that he's very skilled at as a politician. And I think he sees Harvard and kind of New York City liberal politicians as useful foils.
Frank, I also want to ask you about that Virginia sheriff who got a presidential pardon, despite the fact he was tried and convicted on a dozen counts, not to mention caught on tape breaking the law. What is the impact of the president consistently portraying people like that as nothing more than victims of a weaponized justice system?
Yeah, this is the sheriff of Culpeper County, Virginia, convicted federally of a serious crime. The judge from the bench said during the proceedings, "You are a criminal." He was charging between $5,000 and $20,000 a pop for people to get a badge that he says in his defense it was an effort to get people gun access in case someday their right to own a gun was taken away, including, by the way, a convicted felon that he did allow gun possession for. So we've got to take this not as a one-off, but as a larger part of what's going on with regard to corruption, and DOJ saying, hey, we're really dismantling our public integrity section, FBI saying we're not looking at foreign corrupt influence anymore. This is part of a larger picture. And what does it tell the public? Maybe I can't have credibility in my law enforcement. If the corrupt sheriff gets off, how do I report anything to a sheriff's office anymore? It undermines the credibility and effectiveness of law enforcement across the board.